Hello, it's Chad Walkerton from the Higher Living Show with episode 39. And at times you see that we go hard and we break the news and we see something that we want to call out, or we see something that we feel you need to hear about. There's other times, which has happened more recently, and we haven't done a pod in a few weeks. And one of the reasons is because we heard news in the industry, and it was, think about the Australian bushfires and how fast they just take off. We were getting on calls and we were hearing about this all the time. Yet on social media, we weren't hearing it anywhere. We were seeing LinkedIn, X, Instagram. Nothing was being mentioned to patients. Nothing really still has been mentioned. But there was this article which touches upon what we're talking about now, that cannabis released. And what they went into is one doctor's experience. So what we know is that there have been a number of doctors, and some of the doctors that are prescribing the most as well. At times, some of them have lost their capacity to prescribe. Some of these doctors are from really big, well-known clinics. And so when we heard this, I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting to see what unfolds. And obviously, we want to be reporting on what is occurring as well. So sometimes you've got to make sure that we're listening to the right information and that we can validate that it's true. And if we do get anything wrong, we will always put our hand up and say, we got that wrong, right? And that is one of the areas when you try to break news fast, you can go early. But for something like this, particularly being mindful of what's at stake, for some of these companies and their branding and messaging that they put out to patients around what they stand for and what they're about. And when we see that has happened to some of them, it made us think, okay, well, what's going to be reported? And so we didn't break it. I was tempted to, but I didn't choose to go ahead with that. I didn't think it was the right decision. And so we waited. And then we waited some more, and then we waited some more. And every call, it was like wildfire, the Australian bushfires, right? In summertime, we kept on hearing about this. And not only was this applying to some of the the doctors that are prescribing the most, some of them are the most experienced, and some of them we look up to considerably. I know several of them that there's a lot of respect for, and I know that they're coming from the right place, and I know how they go about their prescribing and what is guiding them. And so one of the reasons for us coming very late with this was the caution and the respect that we have for certain doctors and others that we're all growing with in this industry, as we're trying to work out regulation, and we're trying to work out how we can provide access and quality. And while we're doing that, to create a thriving environment, like it can be hard running a business, and we know that. And so we wanted to hold on. Cannabis broke it, as mentioned before, as you're seeing, and then they went into one story. But the big thing for us was that, okay, so if you're looking at some of the biggest prescribers, right? In one way, it's like, well, all that does is validate what we've been saying since 2020, 2021, that we've got a semi-quasi recreational market, and there was a necessary correction. And that probably applies to some of the doctors. Yeah. I know that doesn't apply to all of them, so it can't be a blanket statement. But also the thing that it does is, let's think about it this way, right? This industry has been growing at a certain rate that you see the articles. Oh, we've just hit the new big quarter. New patients are coming in. The industry's coming up. That's kind of what we see. But at the same time, it's a race to the bottom because everyone's trying to go cheaper. Obviously, isn't always the best strategy as well. But it's something for another day, which we may be getting into very soon. As I said, point for another day. But what happens, right? So let's say that this industry is growing. And then let's say we have a look at America, where we've seen cannabis be legal in states, and we've seen what that's done to certain industries. Yeah. And where market share can be taken away from because of the therapeutic benefits that we see from cannabis and the medicinal value that cannabis has to many different people, and there's going to be some amazing research that's coming very, very soon. I got a sneak peek at something today, actually, which is going to be outstanding out of America that's going to be coming, and we will cover that in detail. But let's just say that we see cannabis coming up, and then we see data from overseas that say the pharmaceutical industry is losing some of their market share in different products because people are going for more natural medicines, which we see on a global level being a trend. What would be a good way to halt that, to stop that growth, right? Imagine if you're coming into the market as a younger doctor or a doctor that hasn't had confidence in the sector before. And so you start coming in, you start looking at it, or you're about to come in, and then you see that there's an investigation and some of the big doctors lose their licenses. What's the flow-on effect going to be to some of the doctors to start prescribing? And what's going to be the impact and influence on existing prescribers that aren't prescribing a lot, but probably would have got to that point in the future, right? So there's two ways to unpack that. We don't want to be biased. One would be, this is going to lead to safe prescribing of cannabis is what we want, which is a great thing. Fine, and get that. I'm all on board with that, and that is the way that we can move forward to create a medical model which can be beneficial for all people. That is what we want, right? We want it to be accessible. We want it to be safe. We want people to get really good effect. We want to be able to document how beneficial it is so we can say more people can be utilizing under these circumstances. That is fantastic. But also what can happen by default, the appetite, the interest of doctors either coming into the space or prescribing can be significantly reduced out of fear about, are they going to come for me next? So what we know is that 40 of the top doctors are under investigation, could still be active at the moment, and no one is still reporting on this in detail. My question to you as patients, my question to the industry is, we probably should talk about this a little bit more. We should probably get an understanding about what's going on, who's been affected, and what does it mean for patients in more detail. Right? That's happening in Australia right now, and we would love to see more of that. Claps to cannabis for doing this one article, but I think there could be more to really unpack, uncover, and then advocate for what are we pushing for? What are we pushing for, and where are we going? That is a simple, simple message. To take to come back to a different position, we've got something exciting next week where we think it's probably going to be our best one, and you're going to have to wait to see what we're talking about. And at times we zoom out and having a look. We've covered Schedule 3 in America. We've done a really good pod that you can see here. And then more recently, there's been so much discussion. One of the things is that a lot of people are like, cannabis is going to be a major issue this year at the elections. Potentially, it's going to be an issue which some of the swinging voters, it'll change their opinion. It may be the winner that the Democrats want, etc. Everything that went on last weekend with the assassination attempt at Trump, when we start looking at the significance and how much of a priority cannabis can be leading into the final months of the election in November, this is another point for the cannabis industry on a global level and for America to think, is it actually going to happen during these final months, particularly with everything that is going on. Our bet is that this gets pushed down. We may be wrong, right? But our bet is this gets pushed down because there's going to be so much more attention on who is actually going to be at the election, the security issues, and everything else at a high level, where we see that cannabis is going to be the loser. So cannabis is going to be the loser from the election, we believe, because of everything that's gone on in recent detail. And we don't see another way how it can come back to the influence that potentially it was, and the significance of descheduling it to a level where it was either going to go to 3 or below, like many people were wanting. But we don't see it as being something that is high up on the agenda at the moment. Much more is happening. You have a look in the UK. What we've seen is that Parliament has changed, power has changed. It's gone over to the Labor government, but the word is that it's still not going to be in the interest of cannabis patients there either. So when we're reporting on this, we're reporting on some of the top prescribers in Australia being under investigation, cannabis being a non-issue in America, and a change of government not resulting to any changes at all for patients. That's cannabis at the moment. Some of us have been in it for a long time, hence why we're getting a little bit grey. This can be a love or hate, but we're here and we believe that this can be the future of medicine. And we probably will be banging on about this in more episodes and much more to do in the future, because there's a reason. There is a reason why this is one of the most controversial plants, and it is because it has the power to change healthcare and has the power to change the very concept of how we see health, healing, and well-being. And we stand by that, and there's much more to come. We haven't been quiet, just sitting on our hands. We've been busy, and you'll hear what we're up to. It is Chad from On Tracker, and this is Higher Living. Thank you.